I want to tell you about a man named Gerald, 67 years old, retired accountant, meticulous, organized, the kind of man who had a system for everything. His wife noticed it first. He was irritable more often, forgetting things he would never have forgotten before, sleeping poorly, losing his temper over small things. His doctor ran tests. Everything came back normal, so Gerald accepted it. He told himself it was just the stress of retirement, of getting older, of life. What nobody told Gerald, and what I am going to tell you today, is that stress is not just a feeling. After 60, chronic stress causes physical damage to the brain, measurable damage, visible on a scan, and most of it is reversible. My name is Jade, and today I am going to show you exactly what stress does to your brain after 60, the specific mechanism, the specific damage, and 4 things, backed by research, that can genuinely reverse it. 4 things. By the end of this video, you will know all of them.
And at least one will surprise you. Stay with me. Before I show you the damage, I need to explain something important. Stress has always been part of life. Your brain was designed to handle it. Think of your stress response like a fire alarm system. Something threatens you. The alarm fires. Your body mobilizes. Heart rate up, cortisol surges, muscles ready. You deal with the threat. The alarm turns off. The system resets. That is how it is supposed to work. But here is what changes after 60. The reset mechanism weakens. The alarm goes off. A difficult conversation, a health worry, a financial concern, a problem that has no easy solution, and it does not fully turn off when it should. The cortisol keeps circulating at levels the brain was never designed to sustain for days and weeks and months at a time. Think of it like a car alarm that keeps sounding for hours, for days. Eventually, something breaks. That is what chronic stress does to the aging brain. And here is the part that stops people cold when they hear it. You do not have to feel intensely stressed for the damage to be happening. Low-level background stress, the kind most people over 60 live with constantly without even labeling it as stress, produces the same cortisol, the same damage, just more slowly. Let me ask you something. Think about the last time you felt genuinely, completely relaxed. No background worry, no mental to-do list, no quiet hum of concern about health, about family, about money, about time. How long ago was that? If you are struggling to remember, your cortisol levels may have been elevated for longer than you realize. That is what today is about. Most people know cortisol as the stress hormone. They know it is bad in excess, but almost nobody knows what it specifically does inside the brain at the cellular level. Let me show you. Your brain has a region called the hippocampus. It is your memory center, the part of the brain responsible for forming new memories, retrieving old ones, and navigating the world. It is roughly the size of your thumb, and it is one of the most important structures in your entire brain. Think of the hippocampus like a garden. When it is healthy, well-watered, properly maintained, it grows. New neurons form, connections strengthen, memory stays sharp, learning remains possible. Now pour cortisol on that garden, not occasionally, constantly, day after day, month after month. What happens to a garden when you drown it? The roots rot, the new growth dies, the existing plants wither. That is what chronic cortisol does to the hippocampus. Literally. Scientists can measure it. They can scan a brain and see the physical shrinkage caused by sustained cortisol exposure. The hippocampus gets smaller. The neurons die. The connections break. A landmark study from Stanford, led by neuroscientist Robert Sapolsky, one of the world's leading stress researchers, found that chronically elevated cortisol causes measurable hippocampal atrophy. That means the memory center of your brain physically shrinks under sustained stress, not metaphorically, physically. And here is what makes this so important for people over 60. The hippocampus is already naturally smaller after 60 than it was at 40. It shrinks with age. Add chronic stress on top of that natural decline, and you are accelerating a process that was already underway. Does this make the connection between stress and memory loss feel less mysterious? It should, because it is not mysterious at all. It is biology. Let me give you the specific evidence, not vague references, the actual findings.
The Yale Stress and Brain Volume Study. Researchers at Yale University scanned the brains of adults reporting high levels of recent stressful life events. They found significant reductions in gray matter volume, specifically in the prefrontal cortex, the region responsible for decision-making, emotional regulation, and working memory. Not just the hippocampus, multiple brain regions reduced, measurably, from stress alone. Let that land for a moment. Stress, not disease, not aging alone, not genetics, was sufficient to produce measurable reductions in brain volume in otherwise healthy adults. The cortisol and Alzheimer's connection. A study published in Nature Mental Health in 2023, one of the most significant recent findings in this area, found that people with higher levels of cortisol in their blood had significantly more amyloid burden in their brains, the same toxic protein associated with Alzheimer's disease. Higher stress, more amyloid. The connection is direct, and it is documented. Now think about what that means. Stress is not just harming your mood. It is not just disrupting your sleep. It is contributing to the accumulation of the same proteins that define Alzheimer's disease in a brain that is already under the pressure of natural aging. The good news. And here is where the study of stress becomes genuinely hopeful rather than just alarming. The same research that documents cortisol damage consistently shows that the hippocampus has something that most brain regions do not: neuroplasticity, the ability to regenerate, to grow back. The garden can recover. Given the right conditions, reduced cortisol, regular aerobic exercise, quality sleep, specific interventions, hippocampal volume can increase, measurably, in adults well into their 70s. The damage is real, and so is the reversal. Before we get to the 4 reversals, I want to make sure you can recognize what we are actually talking about. Because chronic stress after 60 often does not look like what people expect. It rarely looks like a breakdown, rarely looks like panic. It does not announce itself dramatically. It looks like this. You sleep, but wake feeling unrested. Your mind starts working the moment your eyes open. There is a background hum of worry that you have learned to live with, about your health, your finances, your family, things you cannot control. You find yourself snapping at people you love over things that should not matter. Your concentration has shortened. Reading or watching something requires more effort than it used to. Small decisions feel heavier than they should. You have probably normalized most of this. Most people over 60 have. Let me ask you something direct, not to alarm you, to help you see clearly. How many of those things sound like your last month? If the answer is 3 or more, your cortisol is very likely elevated. And it has probably been elevated for a while. That is not weakness. That is biology meeting circumstance. And it is something you can address. Here is how. Reversal 1. Aerobic exercise. Specifically, this kind. Of all the tools that exist for reducing cortisol and regrowing the hippocampus, aerobic exercise is the most researched, the most consistent, and the most powerful. But the type matters. And the timing matters. Here is the mechanism. When you do aerobic exercise, brisk walking, cycling, swimming, anything that elevates your heart rate to a moderate level, your body releases a protein called BDNF, brain-derived neurotrophic factor. Think of BDNF like fertilizer for brain cells, specifically for the hippocampus. It promotes the growth of new neurons. It strengthens existing connections. It directly counteracts the damage cortisol causes. A study from the University of British Columbia followed older adults in a 6-month aerobic exercise program. At the end, brain scans showed a measurable increase in hippocampal volume. The memory center grew in adults over 60. From walking, not running, not intense training, brisk walking, 6 months. The timing that matters most, and this is specific, so pay attention, is morning exercise. Research suggests that cortisol naturally peaks in the morning.
Aerobic exercise at that time burns through the morning cortisol spike more efficiently than the same exercise done later in the day. 30 minutes. Brisk. Before 10 a.m. if possible. That one change, morning aerobic exercise, 30 minutes, most days, has more evidence behind it for stress reversal and hippocampal protection than almost any supplement or intervention available. Does your current routine include this? If not, this is the first thing to add. Reversal 2. The breathing technique that actually works. Most people have been told to breathe deeply when they are stressed. They try it. It helps a little. And then life continues and they forget. The reason it only helps a little is that most people are doing a version that is not specific enough to activate the system that needs activating. Your body has a nerve called the vagus nerve. It runs from your brain stem all the way down through your chest and into your abdomen. It is the direct line between your brain and your parasympathetic nervous system, the system that turns off the stress response. Think of the vagus nerve like a brake cable. When it is engaged properly, the cortisol pump slows, heart rate drops, the alarm system quiets. The breathing technique that engages it most effectively is called physiological sighing. 2 short inhales through the nose, followed by 1 long, slow exhale through the mouth. The exhale should be twice as long as the inhales combined. That specific pattern, double inhale, long exhale, activates the vagus nerve more powerfully than any standard deep breathing exercise. Research from Stanford, published in 2023, showed it was the single most effective real-time stress reduction technique tested across multiple breathing methods. 30 seconds, 3 repetitions. Anytime you feel the cortisol rising, it costs nothing, it requires nothing, and it works immediately. Reversal 3. Cortisol-lowering foods. What you eat directly affects your cortisol levels, and most people are eating in a way that is making their stress response worse, not better. Here is the specific connection. Blood sugar instability is one of the primary triggers for cortisol release. When blood sugar drops sharply, after a high-sugar meal, after skipping meals, after drinking alcohol, your body interprets it as a physiological threat. Cortisol surges to stabilize it. That means every blood sugar spike and crash is a cortisol event. And for most people eating a typical Western diet, that is happening 3 or 4 times a day. The fix is not a radical diet. It is 3 specific additions. Omega-3 fatty acids from fatty fish, walnuts, or a quality supplement have been shown in multiple trials to measurably reduce cortisol reactivity. The brain literally becomes less sensitive to stress with adequate omega-3. Magnesium, specifically the L-threonate form we discussed in another context, plays a direct role in regulating the HPA axis. That is, the hormonal system that controls cortisol production. Magnesium deficiency, which is extremely common after 60, is associated with elevated cortisol and increased stress reactivity. And dark leafy greens, spinach, kale, Swiss chard, are among the richest dietary sources of magnesium and folate, both of which directly support cortisol regulation. 3 additions. Fatty fish twice a week, a magnesium supplement, leafy greens daily. Not a transformation, a targeted addition to what you already eat. Reversal 4. Purpose and meaning. This one is underestimated. This is the one that most people dismiss as soft, as not really medical. But the research is hard, and it is compelling. A study from the Rush Medical Center, following over 1,000 older adults for years, found that people with a strong sense of purpose in life had significantly lower cortisol levels. Not marginally lower, significantly. And they had measurably better cognitive outcomes. Purpose reduces cortisol, chronically, at a biological level. Here's the mechanism. When you have something that matters to you, something you are working towards, something you feel is meaningful, something that gets you out of bed with intention rather than habit, your prefrontal cortex is engaged.
That is the rational, forward-thinking part of the brain. And when the prefrontal cortex is active and engaged with meaning, it downregulates the amygdala, the brain's alarm system. In simple terms, meaning quiets the alarm. Let me ask you something. What do you wake up for? Not what you have to do, what you want to do. What feels worth your time and your energy? If that answer comes slowly, or not at all, that is worth paying attention to. Not just for your mood, for your cortisol, for your hippocampus, for your brain. Purpose does not have to be grand. It does not have to be a new career or a life mission, a garden you tend, a grandchild you mentor, a skill you teach, a community you contribute to. Research is consistent. It is the presence of meaning, not the scale of it, that drives the cortisol reduction. 4 reversals. Let me bring them together. 1. Aerobic exercise, 30 minutes, brisk, before 10 a.m. most days of the week. This is the most powerful hippocampal regeneration tool available. Start tomorrow morning. 2. Physiological sighing, 2 short inhales through the nose, 1 long exhale through the mouth. 3 repetitions whenever you feel the stress rising. 30 seconds. No equipment. Immediate effect. 3. 3 dietary additions. Fatty fish twice a week, magnesium L-threonate daily, leafy greens every day.
These directly reduce cortisol reactivity at a biological level. 4. Purpose. Something that matters. Something you are working towards. Something that engages your prefrontal cortex with meaning rather than worry. If you do not have it, find it. The research says your brain needs it as much as it needs sleep. Gerald did these 4 things, not all at once, one at a time, over 4 months. His wife called me recently. She said, "He is back. Not completely, not perfectly, but back in the ways that matter. Patient again, present again. Sleeping through the night again." He had not changed his medication. He had not started a new prescription. He had addressed the thing nobody had ever discussed with him in 20 years of medical appointments. His cortisol. That is not a small thing. That is everything. Stress feels like a feeling, a bad week, a difficult season, something to push through. But after 60, chronic stress is a physical event happening inside your brain. Right now. Quietly. Without drama, without symptoms, you would immediately connect to it. The hippocampus is shrinking. The amyloid is accumulating. The alarm is not turning off. And most people are never told. Because stress does not show up in a blood panel, it does not get flagged at a 15-minute appointment. It sits outside the standard conversation. That conversation ends today for everyone watching this. If this video gave you something useful, please share it. Think of someone in your life who is visibly stressed, who has been stressed for years, who has normalized it, who has told themselves it is just life. Send this to them. It might be the most important health conversation they have this year. Take care of that brain. It has been working for you every single day of your life, under pressure, under stress, without complaint. Give it what it needs to recover. Everything in this video is based on published peer-reviewed research and is for educational purposes only. It is not medical advice. Please speak to your doctor before starting any new supplement or significantly changing your exercise routine, especially if you have existing heart or kidney conditions. That conversation is always worth